Good morning, Peter Carson here from Expert User Manager for our Ask Me Anything on Teams provisioning. Pretty quiet early morning for a lot of folks. Mark and Tom, I see you're on there. The floor is actually open, and I don't have a particular format for this, so let me just unmute yourselves. And if you want to say good morning, ask questions, go ahead.
Open all the chests you've seen.
Morning, yeah, Tom here, Tom Eastham. Hi.
Morning, Tom. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great, thanks. Yeah, you?
Good, well, thank you. So, curious, what's your history with Teams provisioning? Have you looked at our solution before? Have you done something yourself? Are there particular questions that I can answer for you?
So I work for Provision Point. So I just joined because I'm, interested to see what you're showing today. Christian Buckley sent me the information actually last night. I thought I might be interested, so I signed up and here I am. So yeah, I've done quite a lot of Teams provisioning.
Cool. What does Provision Point do? Tell me more about it.
It does provisioning, life cycle, and governance for Office 365.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm guessing fairly similar to what you do here with your product, right? So Teams provisioning, SharePoint, Planner, things like that.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, ours is an open source solution. It's not a for sale product. Yours is a commercial product.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I got that from your. He also sent me a little, like a little short video of stuff, which I got some. I got that from there. That it's open source.
Cool.
Yeah, so it sounds more like you've got building blocks there that people can sort of piece together. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, if you're curious, I can take you through a little tour through.
Yeah, I'd love it.
Okay. And I see Vincent just joined as well. As folks come in, feel free to, I'm not sure if you can unmute or you have to ask questions through the online. I'm a little new to doing this style presentation, so we'll wing it as we go along. So Tom, yeah, this is a development version of the installation that I use for demo purposes as well. It's basically driven by a number of SharePoint lists that serve various different purposes. So we actually have the request form here on the right, and we have an A to Z web part here that shows sites or teams that have been created that either you may already belong to or ones that you have visibility to that you can request to join through there. So I can come through here and say, hey, I want to request a new site. This being a development environment, the divisions aren't particularly meaningful, but I can choose temporary demos as a division, and then I get a series of templates available to me from there. And that's all driven through the list that we have up here. So we've got a divisions list that drives what appears in that first dropdown, and we can define, is there an approver for that, and the workflow will take that into account. Is there a site naming prefix that needs to be applied to sites, and where is the main site for this division? And the idea is that can be made a hub site, so as sites are created, they can join that hub from there. And then the next list we have here is the site templates. That drives the second choice that we saw. So after I choose a division, divisions can be mapped to have various different templates available to them that define what type of site or what type of team are you then requesting. Is it a classic site? Is it a modern site? Is it a team site, communication site? Is there an Office 365 group associated with it? And then we have a bunch of choices around, do you want to create a team? Do you want to add a OneNotes tab to that team? Do you want to create a planner and add a tab for that? And that all defines choices that you see on the web part itself. So as I come down through here and I say, hey, I want to choose a modern communication site, for example, we're showing the prefix because there's a site prefix defined on that division. I enter in the title. It'll create the site URL for me. It'll do things like replace places with dashes and check to see if that site's available, and allow you to continue from there. And if I was to choose something different, like a modern team site, I have just different choices here because now I have the option to create a team or add a OneNote or create a planner from there. You can turn these all on and off through that site templates list. In fact, you can extend this form if there's fields that you want to capture that are specific to your business. There's actually a content type behind this. You can extend the content type, add new fields to it, and the form will just automatically render those for them. So you don't need to be a developer to expand on that. And then we support PNP templates. So if you've got a particular snapshot of what a site should look like in there, you can template it and then apply that as part of the provisioning as well. We do that ourselves here at Envision IT. We've got a client template that has particularly libraries and folders and such that we want to have in there, and the site just starts out with those, so it makes it easier from that point of view. The planner templates, we haven't actually implemented those yet. We have the ability to create a planner, but we, in a separate project, did some work around templating buckets and tasks for a starting planner. We just haven't rolled that back into this project just yet. And we also support blacklisted words. So if there's particular words like HR or human resources that you don't want sites to be created with, so that people don't sort of abscond with department names that they shouldn't use, you can add those to this list here, and they will get excluded. You won't be permitted to create those as part of your sites. And ultimately, what it's doing is just it's writing an entry into this list web part here, and then there's a logic app workflow and some Azure automation that actually drives the creation of the site, the team, the group, all this various different elements from there. And then the last piece from a teams and sites point of view, we have this site metadata list that actually gets added to each site. And what it does is it provides some metadata about the site itself. And the idea being here that when I'm back on my homepage and I'm looking at this A to Z list here, it can be set up to use search to crawl for those list entries across all the sites. And then it'll give you a nice security trimmed view of sites that you have access to through there. So you only see the ones that you are actually a member of those sites. And there's an API that can sit in front of the sites list that I was showing you. So if you want to provide additional security so people can't directly access the list, you can't see sites that they shouldn't have visibility to through there, that all then gets masked by the API. So Tom, specific questions on what we're doing there? I'm curious to compare and contrast with what Provision Point is doing on your side.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot of similarity there. Your solution is coming from like configuration within SharePoint lists.
Right.
You know, which is, you know, that's great because you can extend it. It's very easy to add extra columns, and like you say there with your form, you know, that's driven from a content type, so it's very easy to add extra fields to the content type and display it on the form. And Provision Point comes from a sort of a different angle to that, in that the configuration is all held within Provision Point, you know, within its database, and then that's surfaced through screens within Provision Point. So the user themselves doesn't have so much flexibility in changing it like you do, because, you know, yours is more open source and so easier for people to, you know, work with.
You can modify it.
Yeah, so as you know, you can still do all of that, but you do the configuration items that we provide in our template or definition.
Okay.
You know, and we still have a request form like that, and you can build it up. But, you know, it's just all built up within the actual product itself.
So I guess we've been more focused on the provisioning side, and we've talked internally and with our clients around the governance and the life cycle and, you know, retention and disposal and that side of things. We haven't really provided any solution around that side. Maybe you could talk a bit more around this side here.
Yeah, I mean, sure, because we have, you know, with the life cycle, you can have set a lease, so the length of time that you want to keep that site, team or group or planner or whatever it is, you know, the length of time that you think you're going to need that for. which is in the same, following the same principles as you have with the policies for groups within Office 365.
Right.
So you can set that up, and then there's a concept of having actions within that like service that you've created. So throughout the life cycle of, let's say, the team, if you think you want to keep it for longer than is originally assigned, there's an action that you can go in there and extend the lease length for another, however many days or something like that. And then with that, each of the actions has got then approval associated with it as well. So, again, within your definition, you can say whether certain actions should, need to go through an approval process, or whether the particular users have got permissions to do that themselves.
Right. Cool. Okay.
Yeah, and then when it's reached the end of its life cycle, you can do certain actions on it. So you can choose the types of actions that you want to perform on it. If that's archiving it, if it's deleting it, if it's changing the permissions, notifying certain people,
So
things along those lines.
For archiving Microsoft Team and all its related conversations and documents and such?
Well, so at the moment with our archiving, we for a team, we quite simply put it into an archived state, as in the native team archived state. Okay. So, and you can optionally choose to have the SharePoint site put as read-only as well. Right. So we'll do those, and then for like a SharePoint site, it uses site policies, so sets the site to read only through the policy. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Wait, let me unmute a couple other folks here and see what questions we've got going on. Vincent, Matt, good morning.
Morning, how are you doing today?
Good, yourself?
Oh, not bad. I actually don't really have any questions. I was just, as you know, we're kind of just going down this path with you right now, and I just wanted to kind of listen in to see what other customers or whatnot had questions around the provisioning tool to see where, we could possibly take it in the future.
Okay, very good. Vincent, how about yourself? No, we lost you there. Matt, question for you. Curious if you've seen all the latest bits that we've done. We actually just pushed a release out the end of last week.
No, I haven't yet.
So there's some interesting things in there. A couple new features that we've added in, this ability to manage prefixes on sites. So both the title and the alias, so you can define at the division level, particular divisions you want to have the name of a province or name of a division or whatever works for your organization. You can actually define that at that level. And in the request form, we're actually using some of the new Fluent UI features where we can actually display that prefix in the title and alias fields here. So you can't change it, but it shows you that, hey, I'm actually going to create the title with that in there and have that come across as part of that. And then the other thing we recently added in was the blacklisting features to say, hey, there may be particular words that you don't want to see in names of teams. You don't want somebody arbitrarily creating the human resources team if HR hasn't actually created the official one just yet, for example. Us being able to add that to a blacklist list in SharePoint and then having that blocked out in here. So if I then try and create that particular site, it'll say, sorry, no, that phrase or word cannot be used. You got to choose something different for your site.
Prefixes are good because actually That's being worked into our workflow right now, actually, with department sites and project sites and whatnot, to include some prefixing on that. So that's going to be helpful.
Yeah, it's a common request, and it's something that Microsoft provides, but you need Azure AD P1 to get some of the features like the blacklisting and prefixing. We felt they were, pretty common things and actually fairly easy to incorporate into the solution itself. And development of the solution has actually been interesting. I mean, a lot of these features have come through requests from clients. In particular, the blacklist was one client, the prefix was another, and they basically say, hey, we're happy to fund that little bit of development to tweak and enhance the solution, and then we roll that back into the open source from there. And that's actually how the majority of the development on the solutions actually happen.
Yeah, I like the blacklisted words feature. That's really nice.
And another that came up just related to that is, didn't realize it, but there's actually a lot of special characters that you actually can't use in provisioning requests. So whether it's an alias or a site URL, let me go back to a modern communication site, for example. I remember some of the special characters that just doesn't like in there. I'm not seeing it strip that one out right now. I'll have to get the proper list together for that. But basically, Microsoft publishes a fairly long list of characters you can't use in aliases or in URLs. So we now strip those out as part of that as well. So it's kind of related to the blacklist, but it's baked in to the product. And it's still a work in progress. We've got a client in Germany who's just actually launched the provisioning solution out on yesterday this week. They've already provisioned 75 new teams for their organization. So it's obviously being well used already. But apparently there's some special accented German characters that Microsoft doesn't like in aliases as part of that as well. So there's a bit of discovery going on to say, okay, what can or can't we use as part of that through there. One of the big things that we've spent a fair bit of work on recently is just the whole kind of making it enterprise ready in terms of robustness as you get larger implementations like that, where there are a lot of people spinning that out and working with that. And the challenge that we had was that the underlying structure to it, as I've shown you the SharePoint list side, but there's a logic app workflow that triggers off of that list. So if I have a look at this create site workflow, it's basically triggered when a new item is created in that SharePoint list. And there's a number of things that it does through there, ultimately coming down, understanding if there is an approver in the division and site template for that particular one, and is it approved or not, and then calling out to Azure Automation. This is actually where the heavy lifting happens and the main work happens on the solution, is within that Azure Automation. Now, if I go over and have a look at that automation account, so it's got a number of runbooks in it that do different things. The main one being the actual create site runbook. And the problem we were having, these particular runbooks use PMP, to the Microsoft Patterns and Practices commandlets and scripts to do a lot of the work through here. And we found there's known issues running those PMP scripts in automation, particularly when you get multiple instances of the runbook running at the same time. And you actually have cross-contamination where variables that you set in one instance of the script can affect the other instance of the script, and weird things start to happen. It takes a long time to figure out what was going on through there. What we ended up doing was actually creating the runbook scripts as workflow scripts, and we actually have a separate runbook in here called set runbook lock. And what it does is it looks to see if there's other instances of the same script running, and it basically suspends itself and builds a queue so that only one of them at a time run through there. And that's helped a lot. I mean, we've always had, the solution worked well, but there would be these outliers where suddenly something went wrong as part of the provisioning. You have to go tidy up and clean up, and obviously that's not an ideal situation. And the Logic app recognizes that, and it sends an email to the administrator to say, hey, something's wrong, you got to go look at the logs to see what's happening. But obviously we want to eliminate that as much as possible. So this has really tidied that up from that point of view. There's still, we find a fair bit in the scripts that need to check retries and such, because there's a lot of moving pieces in Office 365 groups when you're doing provisioning, and you actually see it now when you go to the admin center. There's big warnings from Microsoft saying, if you create a new team, there might be a 24-hour delay in adding new members, maybe a delay. I mean, the whole Office 365 is getting a tremendous workout with the COVID crisis and really working remotely. And I think we're seeing some stresses in there. So we've tried to account for that and say, okay, where are the spots where we need to wait for background sync processes to happen on the Microsoft side, and try something, check if it worked or not, and basically retry that for a period of time to make sure it goes through successfully before we continue to the next step from there.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing quite a lot of issues like that as well at the moment with with the whole COVID-19. There are so many delays going on now within the provisioning process, or just generally querying the graph. You can see there's a lot of delays in there.
Yeah, if I go into the main admin center, it has the big warning on it. No, it's not coming up now. So I had a big banner up here most of the time saying, hey, we're seeing some challenges in there. Kudos to Microsoft Teams. Adoption went from, what was it, 7 million users to 40 million users in a 2-week period or something like that. Like, it was a pretty crazy adoption curve as everybody switched instantly to remote work. And for the most part,
under the circumstances, you're right, they've done pretty well, really.
Yeah, yeah.
So did I see in your like a little video earlier that you could provision a stream? Is that right?
It's one of my wish lists, and actually I've been meaning to experiment with there's a new Power Automate where you can automate web pages that don't have connectors for them, because the challenge is that Stream doesn't actually have any API available to it. It's been one of the top things in user voice, probably right behind the ability to share streams with guest users that also doesn't exist for several years now, and that's a challenge. I mean, if I look at the way that we use Teams internally at Envision IT, actually, let me just pull up a internal team. Give me 1 minute. I'm just trying to get this to an appropriate to share spot. Nope, and not signing in. Come on. Yeah, so let me pull this across here. So if I look at some of the teams that we have at Envision IT, I mean, we've got teams for each of our departments, so consulting versus development versus HR, et cetera, from there. And then we have client teams. And this is actually a philanthropic project that we're involved with that is a good one to share as an example. But basically, what we decided from an information architecture point of view, which is such an important step for your organization as you start to roll out teams, is understanding what a team represents and what a channel represents. And for us, we said the team represents a client and a channel represents a project. I mean, we're a small organization of 17 people. We do have a lot of different clients we worked with over the years and tend to work on quite a number of active projects at a time. That structure worked well for us. So here we've got a team for the VRX therapy projects. We've got channels, the general channel, and then different project channels underneath as part of that. What we do is we tweak the SharePoint security a little bit. We say, okay, it doesn't make sense for everybody to belong to every team because we don't want them to get overloaded with chatter from the project conversation point of view, but it does make sense for everybody to have visibility to the documents in there. So, when you when you create a team and it creates a modern team site in SharePoint, it makes the members of the team site. We extend that and say, oh, okay, let's add our staff group to that SharePoint site so everybody has visibility to the SharePoint site, even if they're not involved in the conversation side of things. And we find that works well from that point of view. But then we use OneNote extensively. We use Streams extensively. So if I go through the various different spots here, we've got tabs for OneNote here. Part of what our solution does is when you say, yes, I want the OneNote tab in there, and you create a new channel, we actually have a web part you can use for channel requests as well. It'll create not only the OneNote tab, but it'll create the section that matches the channel and kind of keeps that all connected together. On the stream side, here we've got a stream tab. What we like to do is, so when you create a team, it creates an Office 365 group, and that group includes a streams group. And streams has a concept of channels as well, but they're not related to channels and teams at all. And I kind of wish they were, because they do have a logical connection there. So what we do is we create the channel in streams to match the channel in teams. And then we add a stream tab to our teams to point to that streams channel. I know that sounds confusing, but basically what happens is when we do things like recorded conference calls in Teams, they get automatically recorded in Streams, but they just live in a general bucket, not connected to anything. So then we go over to Streams, we tag it to the channel, and it automatically shows up here in Teams under the tab. So it makes it much easier to then find and collect those videos. So we do this across all of our projects quite extensively. Find it a very handy way to organize that. The unfortunate thing is we can't automatically create that channel in Streams. We can't tag that video automatically in Streams because we don't have the ability to programmatically go in and drive Streams as part of that.
Yeah, that's like a really nice solution, actually, isn't it? As you say, it's a shame you can't do any work on Stream via the Graph API, because that would make a really nice solution.
It would, yeah, and even the ability to say, hey, when I create a channel in Teams, why can't that extend over to Stream and have a channel there as well? I mean, more and more we're recording most of the conversations that we have. I find that really valuable to be able to go back and refer to them later, and to be able to connect them back to the channel. I know they're tagged to the calendar appointment that you made, but that's not a very useful way a month later to go find it again.
No, having a tab like this is much better, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So Tom, have you looked at the Power Automate? I think they call it remote process automation or something like that.
For Stream?
Well, just in general, the ability to drive any sort of web application that doesn't have an API.
No, not really. I mean, Stream is definitely one of the things that we were going to be looking at, because Provision Point does pretty much what you've got here. It does Teams with channels and tabs, and it does Planner and OneNote. But the one that I really wanted to get in there was Stream, but kind of, well, just not really stuck on it, but without a way
for Microsoft.
Yeah.
Yes, it's from.
But no, I haven't looked at this.
Automation. I mean, I chatted with some MVPs about this. I think somebody else had tried it and said, "Oh, we didn't have a lot of success using it against Streams." Basically, you record.
Okay.
The things that you do, like creating a channel in a stream, and then it can play that recording back and automate that through a
kind of like you would with like some of these automated testing tools, then, right?
Exactly. I mean, we used to use a tool called iMacros, which was actually quite good at this. I've thought about that as well, because it's a nice way to do that sort of automation where you don't have access to the underlying APIs, for example, to be able to do that. Yeah, you can basically do browser automation. You're right. I mean, it's a common scenario in web testing, but you can actually use it for automation process. We actually used this product early in the Azure B2B days because we didn't have a Graph API for that. So we were actually driving the Azure portal pages to add people in as guest users. The Azure portal changes so often things will break all the time. It's not a great way to do things from that point of view.
Oh yeah, it's good. So you can set up channel templates in here as well then, can you?
Yeah, actually, this is something I'd like to get your feedback on, because I'm not 100% sold on, it was my vision, but where this all ended up. So let me come back to Teams in here. So I spoke with some of the engineering teams in Redmond back in the fall, I guess it was, about this. And you know, I think some of them got it, some of them didn't. But the idea was, okay, if I've got a team here, and yes, I can just come into the ellipse and say I want to add a new channel to that. If you want some structure to a channel, like let's take our example. You know, we said, okay, a team represents a client and a channel represents a project. Well, just an empty folder for your project, or do you want some structure to that, like setting up the OneNote or setting up a planner or other things as part of that? Well, we can't take over the add channel. There's no way to template the channel creation yet from Microsoft. So what we said was, well, let's just create a SharePoint framework web part that we can add into a team and have the channel request process come through here. Now, we can't turn off this one here, but we can limit who's able to add a channel through there. So we do have some control from that point of view. And then this is basically working the same way, that you know, when somebody hits add here, it's writing to a separate list. So we've got a Teams channels list here, and a similar logic app workflow that triggers off of that then goes and creates the channel, sets up any folder or metadata structure that needs to be in there, sets up the OneNote, creates the planner if it needs to, attaches the tabs, does all those steps from that point of view. The piece that I find awkward with that is that you need to add this to every team, and we can programmatically add it to the team, but when you first go to use it, it's kind of only half initialized. That's just how SharePoint Framework web parts work in Teams. So you need to click on it and then go through an initialization step, which is a little awkward from a user experience.
Yeah.
So one of the things I've been thinking about and chatting with my team about is, well, what if we said to people, you know, just go ahead and ad hoc add channels in there. Now, I was hoping that Microsoft had a logic app or a flow trigger that could get triggered when somebody creates a channel. Unfortunately, that doesn't exist either. But we could have a timer process that says, hey, go look for new channels. And when you see one through the Graph API, and we can do that, and have a team bot that actually responds to the channel and says, hey, I see you just created this channel. Would you like the OneNote tab set up with a new section for it? Would you like the planner set up for it? And make it more of a conversational type of interface rather than the SharePoint Framework web part.
Yeah, I mean that would certainly be nice, wouldn't it, if you could do it, you know, via a chatbot or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, and we're just exploring things like, you know, the approval for requesting a new team. I mean, why are we sending that through email? Well, because the out-of-the-box approval workflows in Logic Apps and Flow are email-based, so can we use adaptive cards and Teams and make it work better from that point of view? There's still some challenges using adaptive cards and Teams that we're working through. But yeah, the more that we can drive it into that style of conversation, the better, I think.
Yeah, I mean, so again, Provision Point comes from a slightly different angle in that you really do everything through the Provision Point app. So for things like creating a new channel, you know, the same things that you know, limitations that you've got here, in that you can't stop people going there and adding a new channel, right, if they've got the permissions to do so. But within Provision Point, you can go to that team, and then there's like a list of actions that you're allowed to perform on it. And you know, one of them would be create planner. So you can create a planner and add it to a tab, and you can create a channel from a predefined template that you set up.
Okay, so similar concept.
Yeah, so like your one goes to a tab that you've added, and then you request it through there. And our one, you just go to the team within Provision Point app and request it from there. So it's the same, but you're just going from different angles.
So where do I go to the Provision Point app? Is it its own web app that you would open up? Do you actually put it in the left nav of Teams? Like how do I as a user get there?
So you can either access the web interface, you know, which a lot of our traditional users, clients would be using. You know, ones that are more using it from a SharePoint perspective, and ones that are using it that are more Teams focused, they can use the Teams app. So, you know, you install the Provision Point app for Teams, and then you can pin it to your launcher, and then you access it from there. So, you know, from there you can then go to your directory of Teams. You can, you know, you can click on one to see the metadata for it and the actions that you can perform on it.
Okay.
You know, and then you can, you know, if you've got tasks within Provision Point, you can go to them from there, and then you can see like a timeline of the actions that have been performed on that team.
Okay.
But for those users, they can see it all from within the Teams interface.
Right. Nice.
Yeah.
So have you thought about doing chatbot style integrations?
Yes, but like this, I think in the same way as you were saying earlier, like a lot of your functionality is driven by customer requests, okay? And, you know, ours is the same. You know, we have our own internal roadmap, and that gets altered, you know, based on customer requests. And having a chatbot like just hasn't featured on it yet.
Okay.
So, you know, we haven't really had anyone saying, you know, I'd like to do my provisioning via a chatbot.
Yeah, I
Maybe
think
that's
people are
a
not
bit,
used to that mode of interacting just yet.
Yeah, I think it's a bit too early. Yeah, yeah, but it will certainly would be a nice approach.
Yeah.
Mm.
Bill, sorry, I didn't see you sneak in there. How are you doing this morning?
Okay, sorry I slept in.
No worries.
I had one question for you. Have you been able to do anything around getting all your stuff to work with MFA yet?
No, so I mean, we're recommending people have a separate service account with the MFA turned off. I meant to reach out to you on that particular topic, independent of this. So where have you landed there?
I do have a solution now with the certificate and the new authentication process in PowerShell that just, and actually in the PNP, gets around one of the biggest problems. Even with certificates, you have to connect as an app and a secret to do graph calls. They've actually rolled it all together so certificate works.
Okay.
And they've given you a single call to generate your certificate and everything now. But, and this is the big issue I ran into, is in Azure Automation, which I'm using, that call is broken.
Oh no.
Now, they indicated that they're doing a lot of refactoring for this month's release around authentication, so that the connector, the PNP Connect PNP Online, is being refactored. Hopefully, they fix the problem in that version. But it looks promising. They're making it easier there, so I can do the MFA, and then I moved all my site creation into REST calls in my Power Automate now, and that works.
Oh, so you're not using PNP at all?
I'm using the PNP to do all the other workloads, but the only one I can do is create a site.
Okay.
And that can be done over there. The other one I ran into was the PNP call, at least in PowerShell, it probably works okay on the code side, is for upgrading your site to be a team. Didn't seem to work, but I'm moving that over to Automate to do that. So I just do a REST call on the Automate side.
Okay. You could do the rest call from your PowerShell script too, couldn't you?
I can, yes, but if I'm going to do some of the stuff over in Automate as it is, I figure I'll do it there.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah,
because
we've kind of decided, okay, we're going to keep the logic app just around, you know, the approval and get everything ready, and then all the actual work happens in the Azure automation side of things.
Yeah, that's actually my next step, is to move my Automate into Logic App. But I need to get everything working fine in current specs. So
Okay.
that's what my V4 will be, Logic App and instead of Automate.
Now, were you on the call yet when we were talking about the runbook challenges of multiple instances of the same runbook doing PnP stuff and polluting each other?
Yeah, no, I wasn't, but I know I've seen issues like that, but I gotten around that by not. There was one of the biggest problems I had was moving files. The process that I'd shown you before, the one where we're using the copy command, I'd moved away from that copy command and used a different one now.
Yeah, I've done the same. I did have problems with that one too.
Yeah. The other thing that I thought about for that is you can use, say, a variable in your Power Automate to actually paste your stuff, right?
Well, what we did was we've converted them all to workflow runbooks, and this particular one here is actually responsible for queuing them up. So basically, it's based off one Microsoft published a couple of years ago and tweaked and fixed some things in it, but it goes and it looks for instances of the same runbook that are currently running. And then it figures out, am I the oldest one going? Keep going, otherwise suspend myself, put myself to sleep. And at the end of the script, it gets called again to say, hey, go look at it and see if there's a suspended one there, start it up because I'm finished. And it serializes them so they run one at a time through there. And that seems to help a ton.
As long as nothing gets hung running, you're okay.
Yeah, we've kind of thought about that the whole process could hang and nothing's going to auto start from there. So, I've been thinking about things we should be doing on the Logic App side, and there's still some challenges on the Logic App side, because when we do a call out to this, we say wait for job yes, but the problem is that when it goes in suspended state, it actually comes back to Logic App. It thinks that it's done at that point. So we haven't fixed up the Logic App yet. We just became aware of this in the last day or two. We need some looping going on in here to say, oh, is it actually done or is it just suspended?
And there's no output on that process that you can track to determine if you completed?
Well, it's. I suppose we could look at that. Yeah, I mean, we can see the state of the job. So if it is suspended, we can say, okay, put the Logic App to sleep for a period of time, and continue through again from there. It's just feels like we're layering kludges on top of kludges, to be honest.
Yeah, in my process, I sort of put a batch and wait process, but I didn't find any real problem with, once they were running, if they were in parallel just working with the site, configuring the individual sites, there's never been a problem with that. It always seemed to be up front in the process if they all fired at the same time.
Right, because what will happen is the Logic App is triggering off of the list item getting created, but it has a polling frequency. I mean, we set it pretty low here, but regardless, you can have multiple requests get entered into the site list, and then the Logic App will see all those at the same time, and it'll immediately launch all the runbooks down at the same second together from there.
It doesn't have go to the properties on that one.
Sorry?
There's properties on click the ellipses. There's a setting to tell it how to treat how to handle multiples. Settings. Quick settings. I thought it was the first option. This first one was a split on. That's how it handles multiples.
Oh, so if I turn that off, do I end up with a for each loop in my Logic App?
Yeah.
But even so, I mean, if it was to start them a minute apart and it takes 10 minutes to run, because some of these things take a while to spin through, we're still going to face that. I mean, we did a fair bit of work trying to tidy up the scripts themselves. Let me just find that for a second. Yes, if I look at the actual creation of the team, I mean, what we weren't doing before was we weren't hanging on to the connection from the PNP Connect, and that was a big one. I mean, that's noted in some PNP articles that's where some of the cross pollution happens. We did go through and update all the scripts to say, okay, let's provide the connection to every script that we run in here.
I've always used the connection on mine.
Yeah, that is a safer way of doing it. We still ran into challenges there, that there was still some errors coming up despite doing that consistently through all the scripts.
I wonder if it's some of the calls you're using that are different than mine that are the problem.
Yeah, not sure.
Because I know mine can take up to, well, actually it's gotten pretty fast lately, but it was taking up to 5-10 minutes to run.
Yeah, it depends what you're doing. If you're asking for a communication site, that runs pretty quick. But if you're provisioning a full team.
Yeah, that was the first version I built, and I know that those take a lot longer to do. If you're doing a STM pound 3 type site.
You know, there's a bunch of spots here where now we end up putting in retry logic to say, okay, you know, we know this may take some time. You know, I've created a modern team site that provisions an Office 365 group and a team as part of that, but the group ID will start coming back as 0 because there's still things in the background processes on the Microsoft side that are running that haven't caught up yet.
Is that the biggest one you're getting burned on, is site creation?
Let me see where else we have. I mean, PNP itself, like when we apply the PNP template, I mean, we put retry loops on that as well, because we'll find sort of random errors that, you know, despite logic saying trying the same thing multiple times and expecting different results is insane. It actually works.
Actually, that one I have not seen any problems with in the last while.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, we've had this for a long time like this.
Yeah, the only issues perhaps I've seen there, Peter, is if the templates get out of date, sometimes what we're using gets affected.
Right.
Because schema changes so often. Well, it used to not change for a year. Now they're changing about every 4 to 6 months.
Yeah, so we explicitly create the team site and then as a separate step, create the team. And we've been doing retries around that as well.
So you're using, that's the Teams PowerShell connectors?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, there's a call. It's actually a very simple one post request to convert a site into a team.
So rather than using the Teams commandlets.
Yeah. Which was crazy because when I traced it all through to what it was a rather simple call. Again, the biggest problem is most of the REST calls are so poorly documented.
Yeah, and Microsoft gives you so many different ways to do the same thing. You're never quite sure what the right one is.
Yeah, the nice thing about the PNP is you can go pull the code and figure out what they were doing.
Right. Yeah, this is doing some more PNP provisioning, so that's why we put a retry around that one as well. So I guess we got about 4 different spots where we're doing some retry logic, and we often see them fire through that, particularly the site creation and the team creation.
Yeah, I'm not sure your problem, whether it's the same one I ran into in the past, but I haven't seen it for a very long time. And I monitor everyone. Now, mind you, guys that are using mine are basically not creating a lot of sites anymore. They're just one time a year they do about 30 to 40 of them all at
Right.
once, and that's the biggest hit. And that's where we had the original. Unfortunately, it was an outage at the same times. That was where I had the biggest, and then I went through and put a lot more control on it. This version, I'm dumping much more information in the debugging version of my log dumps, so I can actually see everything that was going on internally.
So we've been playing with Azure Monitor. We haven't pulled it into here yet, but the idea was to start doing some more centralized logging from that. Have you experimented with that site?
No, the only one I'm thinking of maybe switching to is doing actually an insight embedding and get the stuff to write to insights.
Right, which is Azure Monitor and Insights are parcel.
Because you can make the insight call. Now, I haven't figured out where you get the API calls for PowerShell yet, but I know that it has them.
Okay, I mean, we're working on that for another project, so plan is to take that knowledge and bring it in here.
Yeah, otherwise, the way I'm doing, I've got my 9 steps and I monitor my 9 steps, and I've got my retry stuff, so I can resubmit the retry, the whole batch.
Okay.
All done now. A lot of little things I corrected in the current version I'm working with, which is around supporting MFA. So I'm waiting for this month's release, which is in another week or so. Hopefully that'll fix my authentication problem. Otherwise, I'll have to stick with the older version.
The older version being?
March. No, it's on March. March failed. Yeah, March, because we're in May now, yeah. So the April version is not working. Somebody else complained about the same problem I have, following the exact same steps. So it's not just me. And then May, they're talking about redoing everything to fix it.
Okay, cool.
But as you know, in PowerShell, there's when you go to add or Power Automate, you go to add the module, you don't get to pick the version.
Oh, in the Azure Automation, you mean?
Yeah. So the only solution to that is go find out where you loaded it locally, zip it up, and then load the zip from it.
Right, that would work.
Yeah. That was the one that worked for me when I wanted to roll back.
Yeah, so you could be over here and just load it directly as your own module rather than saying go to the gallery.
And it shows up the same way once it's in, doesn't care.
Yeah, that was one of the challenges of switching this to using workflow style runbooks is that most of the PNP stuff you can't do in those style runbooks. We ended up creating our own modules for our helper scripts, which is really just a zip of the PowerShell script file.
Yeah.
It just makes it a little more awkward because there's more bits to load up in different places from there.
And you had to do the certificates for them?
No.
Well, they let you do it without
a zip of the PowerShell itself. In fact, I've got a script in the solution because even the customizations that are specific to each implementation need to get deployed that way. So I've got a create zip here that basically just does it copies the PS1 script into a PSM1, which is the module style script, just an extension change, zips it up and gets rid of the PSM1. So if you've done changes to the helper script or the create customizations, our idea is that anything you're doing unique to your implementation, keep it in this script here, and that way you're not messing with the core scripts. And if we release new versions to have fixes and new features, you don't have to worry about interleaving that with changes you've made. Your changes are all isolated in a separate script file.
I haven't thought about doing that for anything I'm doing, but it would be a possible solution to some things.
Yeah, we've got quite a few clients using this solution now, and you know, starting to think about more productization side of things, not from a licensing or revenue point of view, but just how do you make it easy for people to upgrade and move from version to version and such.
Yeah, that would be that's always the problem when you own a product is or prioritize something is how do you go from this version to this version, and then suddenly nobody upgrades and you're on 4 versions later, and how do you get them to move
Yeah.
forward?
They get orphaned back in time.
Yeah. Your biggest problem in that model is success.
Yes.
I learned that a long time ago. Looking at when I worked for Research in Motion, I noticed they had their biggest problem was how do they do upgrades to everybody's BES.
Yeah.
And everybody's got a different version.
So Brad, Joan, haven't had a chance to chat with you. I'm not sure if you've got specific questions or comments. I don't know if I have to unmute you or, oh no, I can't. Okay. All right. Well, we're getting close to the top of the hour. Tom, it was very interesting chatting with you. I'll have to have a look a little deeper into your solution there. Always curious to see what other folks are doing.
Yeah, indeed. Good to talk to you too. Thanks for the demo.
Awesome. Appreciate it. And Bill, love to hear news as to how the next month's or this month's, I guess, PNP looks, and whether we got some solid solutions from the authentication side of things.
Yeah, hopefully that'll solve my problems. It doesn't, we're going to wait another month until they look at the bug list.
Right. Well, drop me a note once you get through that. Just let me know. I'm curious either way.
Yeah, I was hoping to have it done a couple weeks ago, and then this problem dropped in the April version. So I really don't want to finish it till that problem's fixed. So get rid of the double login requirements I have.
Right. Okay. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I think we'll wrap it there.
Excellent. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.
Thanks, you too. Bye.